Y'all, if you're seeing us now, that means we're getting ready to start. Listen to my scratchy voice. It's been a week, y'all. Let me make sure we're live and then we will get started. Okay, I got a notification from Facebook. Okay, I don't even know what that means. YouTube would like to find and connect devices on your local network. Okay, I don't know what that is. All right, sorry guys, one more second, making sure we're live on, yeah, it looks like we are live on YouTube and everywhere, yay, raw. Okay, let's get this party started, shall we? All right. Okay. Hey, everybody, happy Wine Wednesday. Yes, that's right, I look like a wet dog, just got out the shower, but glad to see you guys. Hope you've had amazing weeks. Hope everybody's doing fantastic tonight. Hope your seahorses are healthy and hope you have a glass of wine like I do so that we can have a fun little chat tonight. I am personally sipping on one of my faves, bread and butter. Whoops. Yeah, gotta learn how to do that right. Bread and butter is amazing. Pinot Noir, of course, my thing. And it looks like my coins are still off, falling into the ground. Oh well, we'll fix it later. Right now, I've already got Dan and Holly with me, so exciting. And we're watching for your comments in the comment section. So we're going to talk a little bit about this week's topic, which is pouch emphysema. And then, of course, we'll open it up for any questions or anything you would like to speak about. Dan, do you want me to ask you questions or do you just want to take it over?
I don't care. However you want to do is fine with me.
Well, you go. I'm going to hand over the reins. You go, sir. Or
No,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, what?
No, I was just going to say before you start talking, we should really quickly, in case anybody doesn't know what pouch emphysema looks like, or are you going to cover that?
No, I didn't plan on covering that specifically.
Okay, so to make it, Dan will have a scientific explanation, but mine is when you may have thought your seahorse was pregnant. All of a sudden, his pouch looks really full. A lot of times, seahorses will take water in and inflate their pouch, make it big, make it small to kind of show off for the ladies, if you know what I mean. However, when it stays big, they're either pregnant or sometimes the case becomes that they have it's gas, right, trapped within their pouch. And the bottom line is, you'll notice your seahorse struggling to swim. It's kind of their pouch almost acts like a balloon, and because of the buoyancy, which Dan will explain in better detail, the seahorse ends up trying to stay off the surface. So if you see your seahorse looking pregnant but not, and he's struggling to swim, stuck at the top, trying to go down but can't, then you're probably looking at pouch emphysema. Dan, go ahead and say the more scientific way to explain that.
Well, pouch emphysema is simply air trapped in the pouch, and it only takes a tiny, tiny amount. When that happens, the seahorse starts having buoyancy issues, and they become positively buoyant. If a male seahorse is holding water, he'll swim around as normal. If he has air in the pouch, he'll be fighting to stay down in the water column. If he doesn't have too much air, if he has more than just a little bit of air in the pouch, he will have a tendency to float up at the top. And if he has a lot of air in the pouch, he will not be able to go down into the water. Um, One of the common misconceptions is in the hobby is that a lot of people want to buy all females because they believe that males are prone to pouch emphysema. And the reality is that males are not prone to pouch emphysema. If the tank is set up correctly, you should not be having this issue. Despite the fact that we had thousands of seahorses in the latter years, once we understood how to deal with this, we rarely, very rarely had instances with pouch emphysema. And it's a very easy fix once you understand it and once you set up for it. It shouldn't be an issue. And I'll also argue that according to the research from the scientists, female sea or male seahorses actually have a stronger immune system than the females do. And I found that quite interesting. And it goes back to the idea that the males carry the babies. So since have the pregnancy, and nature usually makes the one who carries the baby the more disease resistant or the
Stronger,
healthier or stronger, however you want to define it, of the two. Um,
like us chicks, all right, in the human world. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. And I've been watching on the messages, and I keep seeing pouch emphysema pop up, and I see people wanting to use Diamox or antibiotics and what have you, and so much of this is totally unnecessary if you understand what's happening. And in essence, the scientific community hasn't come out and definitively defined what causes pouch emphysema. We know that it's air trapped in the pouch. What we do know is how to prevent it. And preventing it is really easy if you follow the basic rules of setting up a seahorse tank. Um, the, when you set up a tank, oh, come on, there we go. Um, Preventing pouch emphysema takes really good mechanical filtration, and that includes, a protein skimmer, a filter sock, some type of tight filtration to remove the organic matter. And then if you do your regular water changes, if you have your proper stocking density and don't try to put 12 seahorses in a 20-gallon tank, my normal recommendation is one pair for every 25 to 30 gallons. And if you keep your flow up so that you keep the organics in suspension so they can be filtered out through the proper filtration. If you have a good substrate, by that I mean having a tight substrate. You don't want a crushed coral or gravel. You want a relatively fine sand. If you have something with a more porous substrate, then a lot of organics, detritus and stuff will build up in there, and down the road you'll see problems come from that. And then you got to clean all your filters, and especially canister filters. I see a lot of people put canister filters in line, and then they forget about it because it's out of sight and out of mind. And those things can build up a tremendous amount of organic matter, and they themselves can be a leading cause for this. And then, of course, you got to feed properly with not overfeeding and have a good cleanup crew, and probiotics will help. Um, it really, really and truly, it's very, very easy to prevent pouch emphysema. It's not, a big deal. Now, as far as treatment goes, treatment is really quite simple. The first thing you have to do is, or should do, is a pouch evacuation. And a pouch evacuation is kind of scary for a newbie, but it's really not a difficult thing to do. And I looked for a good video, but I didn't like the videos that I saw. So I'll have to describe it instead. And essentially, what you're looking to do, let me fix my screen here. Um, what what you're looking to do is to simply, um, if you're right-handed, take your left hand, reach and grab the seahorse from behind, and then tilt him back. I grab him so that his dorsal fin is sitting in my palm. I see other people doing it differently, and you can do it differently, but I find that that's the easiest way for me to do it, and it's also the easiest way that um, both my wife and my daughter do it. I got, sorry, I got an echo coming in here. Um, So once I have the seahorse, I'm holding him in my left hand. I then take something like a bobby pin where I'll fold back one side, or a catheter. My my wife and my daughter preferred the catheter. I always preferred the bobby pin. And you start at the very, very top of the slit to the pouch. And all you do is come down slightly and pressing inward very slightly until you get the tip of the catheter or the bobby pin just inside the pouch, and then you pull it to one side or the other so you open it. And then you simply tilt the seahorse so that the bubbles come out. And sometimes you can very gently manipulate the pouch, not massage, but manipulate it to help the air come up. And once the bubbles come out and you get no more bubbles, he should be able to swim normal. And you simply release the seahorse and let him go about his business. In many cases, that's all it takes is this one simple pouch evac, and you're said and done. In some cases, it will happen again. And my general approach has always been if it happens once, no big deal. Happens twice, I'm going to watch for a third time. If there's a third time, then I'm going to treat by moving him out of the tank and placing him in a hospital tank with clean, new salt water. Um, you don't want to use tank water. You want to use clean water. And then sometimes that by itself is enough. If he's still getting pouch emphysema, then instead of using Diamox or antibiotics, I simply take clean new salt water and flush the pouch with that. And that almost always works. I
Hey,
have
Dan.
not used Diamox. Yeah,
I was just gonna say you're covering all of it well, very well. But do you want me to wait till the end to ask you questions?
your call.
Okay, I was just gonna say, actually, that was rude. You go ahead and finish. I was just saying because you finish, and then I'll ask my questions. Sorry.
Okay. Either way, I don't care.
Go ahead.
Um, so Diamox we used to have, and we used to use a lot when we first started way back in the beginning. And sometime, I don't know whether it was 2007, 2008, we figured out how to stop gas bubble disease, how to stop pouch emphysema. And the Diamox that we had on hand expired in 2010. 2012, I noticed it sitting on the shelf and threw it away. I have not used Diamox in well over 10 years because I simply haven't had the need. And I see everybody clamoring to get it. With gas bubble disease, I can see where it's needed, but with pouch emphysema, I've never had to use it to stop it. Um, what else?
You want me to shoot
One of
some
the
questions now?
Well, let me cover one more thing that
Go
I
ahead.
see on the boards a lot, and that is never ever try to massage the air out of the pouch instead of doing a pouch evacuation. I see a lot of people give that advice. It's very bad advice, and you can do permanent damage to the pouch by doing that. You can force air into the tissues to where it won't come out under normal means. And it's much better to do the pouch evacuation with some type of a small blood object, such as a bobby pin or a catheter, but do not massage the pouch.
Very good. Okay, well let's go all the way back to the beginning. And
Sure.
you made very clear that I'm just going to throw some questions so that anybody who's not in the seahorse world or hasn't experienced this, maybe it'll help it make sense a little bit more. So you were clear that the scientific world has not determined or come out and said exactly what causes this, but based on your recommendations and the fact that you said setting up properly will prevent this from ever happening, your belief is that it's caused by high organics, correct?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that high organics itself causes it, but it occurs in situations where there are high organics.
Okay, because online there are a bunch of theories. One being that when a male seahorse gives birth, sometimes embryonic tissue is stuck in there and it turns into a bacterial thing. Do you give that any credit? That theory?
No, usually when I see, and that's pretty rare for me that I've seen it, but that usually presents a different set of issues, and usually we end up with a bacterial infection. What's interesting with pouch emphysema is I suspect bacteria is probably the cause, but I don't think it's pathogenic bacteria. I think it's bacteria that's just eating away at the organics. And um, when they have a milky fluid coming out, in those cases, a lot of times you've got something else entirely going on.
Gotcha. So, of course, if the recommendations we're telling you aren't working, just get your butt in Seahorse Sources group and ask specifically, and make sure that you talk to Dan specifically, because sometimes you get some comments that aren't from the same people. Anyhow, okay, so nobody's nailed down the actual cause, but this doesn't happen to every male seahorse. People should not be afraid to buy male seahorses. If you set up properly by following the guidelines that are in your group's file section as to how to set up the tank and everything you just covered, then chances are you're never going to see this. And the reason we decided to talk about this today again is because we saw so many posts about it. And then you covered if it does happen, then you described exactly how to maneuver, and I'm sure we'll come out with a video at some point to specifically show you. But if you have specific questions about his description of how you release the air from the pouch, feel free. We're right here waiting for him. And then you said if it does continue to happen, because I personally had that happen where you helped me out and I managed to release the air. The seahorse could swim fine. Of course, I was new, and it is scary, guys. It's scary to go messing with your seahorse and his pouch, and it's awkward to try to maneuver in that way. And they don't like it. They're gonna fight you. And they don't want to. In fact, interestingly enough, they'll start making a clicking sound, which is a whole nother topic. But it's creepy. You feel like you're hurting the seahorse, but you're not. And is there anything you can add to it, Dan, to make sure that we don't hurt the seahorse? You said don't massage the pouch. Don't. How far do you stick it in? That
That's
sounded
the
really
thing. And
bad.
the
Sorry.
reason I didn't want to show the videos that you were talking about, I found three videos online and I wanted to show a video of how to do it. But in all three instances, I saw where they were putting the catheter in too far. They
Mm.
were, one was actually, moving around the catheter inside the pouch. And I'm afraid of doing physical trauma to the epithelial tissue inside. Um, you don't need to be in. All you need is enough to open up the flap at the beginning of the pouch. You don't need to go way inside the pouch at all. There's really
Okay.
no need for that.
So you just need to open the pouch, and you're saying don't massage it. Do you move the bobby pin or catheter back and forth?
No, I hold it still. And the what I will do is I've got the seahorse in my hand, and while I'm doing that, if I need to, I'll take my thumb and my little finger or my ring finger, and I'll gently move and tilt the seahorse and move it so that the air comes up. But I don't put any pressure. All I'm doing is gently manipulating the the pouch.
And so I don't know the science or I can't even think of the word, the etymology, or not etymology. I can't think of the word. I don't know seahorse parts very well, but the pouch is one, so you don't have to do both sides, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So, because that's and then how long does it typically take for the air? Because I know when I first tried it and I was new and I was scared and the seahorse's bones are clicking or the clicking's happening, whatever you call it. And I felt like I was hurting him, but he was just mad at me, didn't want to be touched. It didn't work at first. The air would not release at first. So what do you do then and how long should it take?
Well, it takes me about 10, 15, 20 seconds to actually do the pouch evacuation. That's once I have the seahorse in my hand. Um, getting prepped and getting everything all set can take a little bit longer. And then if the first time you do it, not knowing exactly how to tilt and exactly what, everything feels like, sometimes it can take a minute, but it really shouldn't take any longer than that.
It took me a lot longer, guys, but because I was scared and not experienced. Now I could do it probably in 10 seconds, as Dan has described.
Yeah.
Also, I don't. I know this is probably common sense, but just to be clear, this is all underwater. You do not take the seahorse out of the tank, out of the water.
You can't see the bubbles come out if you have him out of the water.
Right. Just wanted to make sure. um, and guys, anybody else in the Zoom, I'm going to continue asking a few questions. But if you guys have anything that you think needs to be asked or that you're confused about or think would help people, feel free. Okay, so we talked about once the air is released, how do you know when all of it's out? Will the pouch become flat again? Or
I don't pay attention to the pouch as much as I do to his swimming. If
so
he can swim about normal, I'm done. Even if I don't have all the air out, if he can swim normal, I'm done. If he's not swimming normal, then there's still air trapped inside. Now, sometimes what can happen, there's a couple complications that can occur with this. The first one being that you open up the pouch and you get, no matter what you do, you can't get air out. In that case, you could have air trapped within the tissues in the pouch
mm,
and not just in the pouch itself. Um, that's in that case, it's a little bit different because you're not going to be able to just release the air. And usually, just putting them in a hospital tank under supportive care is enough. But in that case, I may consider Diamox. But if I do it, I'm not going to do it with a flush of the pouch. I'm simply going to do it as a water bath treatment. I don't like pushing drugs into the pouch. I've had instances where people have done that, and then the seahorses were never able to breed or carry fry after that.
Oh,
So I prefer not to do that. The other complication that can occur is that you can't open the pouch. And sometimes, what I've seen is instead of air developing inside the pouch, we'll take the instance where the seahorse is on top of a bubbler and he opens up his pouch and he gets air trapped inside. And sometimes they can end up with muscle spasms that are so tight that the pouch, you can't physically open the pouch. It's almost like us having a cramp. And in those cases, I've sedated the seahorse, and then they were able to spontaneously release the air. And in some cases, I've experimented all kinds of different ways, but I've actually taken seahorses that had pouch emphysema and sedated them, and they spontaneously released. Um, I've also taken seahorses that had pouch emphysema and did nothing for them.
mm,
And in a case in these cases, they were eating, they were hitching at the top of the tank, they weren't acting stressed. So we just waited to see. And the first time we did that, the little guy stayed up at the top of the tank for 6 weeks. And one day, Abby walked in there, and both of us were standing there looking at the tank, trying to figure out which one of the seahorses had the pouch emphysema because he was no longer at the top, and he
awesome.
never had it again. Um,
Right, because
but
they're supposed to be able. I mean, they're supposed to be able to expel. That they do
yes,
this on a regular basis. So, like, I think the point you just made is don't freak out if they're still eating and they're still hitching and they're not acting distressed.
right.
Um,
Now, some of
Go
them
ahead.
will stress out, and if you don't do something, they will perish.
And I know you were. I know I interrupted again. I apologize, but you keep saying things, and I'm like, oh, let me ask. Sorry, but so and now it just left me. No, it's coming back. It's coming back. When you spoke of it, it's a muscle. They've got muscles down there. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, guys. Is when you do try to open the pouch, they're already ticked off that you're touching them. They don't want to be touched, and you're putting them in an awkward position where they feel threatened, possibly. And then you're trying to open their pouch, and they're gonna squeeze that muscle. So, how much force should you use to open the pouch, Dan?
It really doesn't take much force
Barely.
if everything is working normal. It's once you have the tip, you can tell because it's very difficult to get the bobby pin or the catheter inside.
Yep.
And um,
Once it's in, stop. Right.
once it's inside, it's very easy to just pull to one side and open up the pouch. And it doesn't take much of an opening. It's not like when they're, you know, going up to the female with the thing wide open. It's all it takes is a very, very tiny opening for bubbles to come out.
Gotcha. So you see the bubbles as long as they swim after you do it, leave them alone. And then, because it is a common theme online that you just jump to Diamox. And it does work, but you're basically saying, first of all, you just don't like throwing meds at them. And then, can you talk a little bit more about why, excuse me, why just a hospital tank might be able to solve the problem and why you're against putting Diamox in the pouch? Or is
Well,
it?
first of all, the hospital tank has clean water in it, and the underlying cause, in my eyes, is excessive organics in the display tank. And once you put them in clean water, and if they can flush the pouch themselves, or if you do a manual flush yourself, um, you've pretty much solved the problem. I've found that once I discovered that doing plain saltwater flushes with a pouch worked, I never went back to Diamox again. There was no need to.
Wow. And yeah, we got to maybe talk a little bit about what a flush is in case anybody doesn't know. But that's just really interesting to me because you do see people jumping to the Diamox. And one question about that though, if clean new salt water works to help the seahorse expel the air, putting them back into the display tank, they're back in, obviously you'd want to clean up the display tank as much as you could, follow those tips that Dan gave us earlier. But are you not putting him right back? Is he not going to have the same problem again?
The potential's there, but when I on the help desk, when I would receive calls like this, while we were treating the seahorse, we were also going over what needed to be done to the tank. I've had instances where people had crushed coral, for example, and we take the male seahorse, we put him in a hospital tank. While that's going on, I have them remove the crushed coral and replace, either go bare bottom or replace it with sand, and eliminates the problem. Sometimes it's a canister filter that hasn't been changed often enough.
Mm,
Sometimes it's the lack of a protein skimmer. Sometimes it's not enough flow in the tank. Sometimes it's too many seahorses. So once we correct the underlying issues, the problem typically goes away permanently. And it's interesting too, because a lot of times when people would call me and as they were talking to me, I could almost predict when, how long they've had the tank set up. And when I'm talking to new customers, I've often told them, I said, look, the setup that you have 9 months to 12 months from now, you're going to be calling me with issues with pouch emphysema or gas bubble disease or this. These problems don't come up instantly. It takes time for those organics to build up. And, when somebody uses crushed coral or they want to put, 6 seahorses in a 40-gallon tank, um, it, higher stocking density, or there's the lack of a protein skimmer, any of these type of things. Your first week you don't have to have a protein skimmer, but if you don't run a protein skimmer, a few months from now you're going to start having issues.
absolutely. And I'm just very glad that you made the point that there are simple ways to treat the seahorse, obviously. We've covered two of them so far, and we're getting ready to talk about that flush. But also, it's really important to determine what caused it to happen and maybe clean up the tank with the things you just discussed. And just going to say it again, guys, come to Seahorse Versus Group, and you know, nobody's going to be mean, but we can maybe help you figure out what's going on. Believe me, I'm the one. It happened to me. I had to have Dan walk me through and figure out what was going on, why my mail kept having these problems. So nothing to be embarrassed about there. Okay, and
Uh,
before we go to flushes and kind of talk about that a little really quickly, Kim asked, "What do you use to sedate the seahorse?" And
most
Chris, I saw
commonly
your vodka. I'm right there with you, buddy. But go ahead.
most commonly I use um, clove oil. I have used MS-222, but that's kind of hard to get. Clove oil is very easily accessible, and there's not a quote unquote dosing amount that I can say to use. Depends on the water volume, but what we do is we start adding drops until the seahorse becomes very relaxed, and if we get them to the point to where they start really getting slow, then we'll move them to clean water or um, artificially ventilate them with a syringe. Um, but
Because clove oil could put the seahorse to sleep forever, right?
if you put too much, once water passes over the gills, they'll revive instantly.
So even if someone overdosed the clove oil, they could move the seahorse to fresh salt water, and he'd be okay.
Assuming he's still breathing.
Right.
Um, if he's not breathing, if you took a syringe and just push clean salt water through the snout, then you'll flush it off the gills, and usually that'll bring them right back.
Gotcha. And so, and just to make sure that that was clear, because I've personally never used clove oil, so that's like literally a personal question. So you're saying put them in some sort of hospital tank and drop the clove oil in slowly, just to see them get
I actually use
lanky.
like a jar or something smaller
Oh,
because I don't want to use a lot of clove oil,
okay.
and I'm going to be moving them to the hospital tank afterwards for
All right.
observation.
And you made clear perfect. Thank you for explaining that, because that's what I was wondering is you're supposed to have two hospital tanks set up in case, but that's perfect. So you use a small container with clove oil.
Yep.
Gotcha. But it has to be big enough to get your hands in there and
Yeah,
maneuver. But
I tell you, the perfect container that we use for stuff like that is an old coffee container.
gotcha. Chris just asked a wonderful question. I'm not going to forget, we're going to describe what a pouch flush is, because we've talked about releasing the air. We'll talk a little bit more about how Dimux does work. But Chris asked, what's the best approach for pouch emphysema in dwarf seahorses? when a bobby pin is the size of their dang heads.
What we used then in that case was a very small IV catheter. Um, I believe we were using a 22 gauge IV catheter when we did it.
I'm curious. I've never kept dwarf seahorses, guys. Unfortunately, I always wanted to, never got around to it. But those are they as strong as adult as regular size seahorses? Because I just think a little, like fry, and I would hate to even handle them at all. But are the dwarf seahorses as strong as adult seahorses as far as
Yeah, they're just smaller. I mean,
the teeny
you've got to have
tots
a,
scare me.
it's the hard part there is that they're so small that you got to look closely, and it's, you got to have a decent set of eyeballs to be able to see what you're doing.
Chris said they're very strong for their size. Okay, so what is a pouch flush? What do you mean by that?
Well, a pouch flush, we take a syringe with the catheter on it, and we'll put in roughly 1 ml, sometimes a little bit more, depends upon the size of the seahorse. But all we're looking to do is to get a little bit of water inside the pouch to stimulate the male to expel it.
Mm.
And once he expels it, males will often flush their pouch. And in good, clean water, that flushing just cleans out the inside of that pouch. If you're in a tank with high organics, they flush the pouch. It's not doing a lot of good because you're putting bad stuff right back in there.
So a seahorse flushes his own pouch by pulling water in, kind of like a little shower on the inside, and then spitting it back out. And if they're not able to do that because of whatever is causing this issue, whether it be bacteria or whatever, then you're basically doing it for them. You're kind of squirting the water in there for them, right?
Yep. The water, they seem to be able to flush anytime they want. For some reason, when air gets trapped in there, they seem to have a hard time doing that.
Gotcha. And I see you, Kim. So for anyone who's scared, like when I first heard of this, many years ago, and I really wish, Ray, if you're out there watching, jump in here because I know you've done some interesting pouch flushes, and I'd love to hear your opinions on it. But if someone's scared of the word like catheter and all these fancy schmancy equipment words that you're talking about. I remember seeing a post on it once when I first started with seahorses, and I was like, I don't even know where to get that stuff. And no. So, can you use like a? I'm thinking of those plastic syringes where you can pull water in and then push it out. And if you can, if if you used one of those type of situations, could you put too much water in or too much force, and could that cause more problems?
I do believe you can put too much water in. I usually go recommend going on err on the side of caution and using less. I like to put about a 1 ml, maybe a little bit more if it's a larger seahorse, um, just enough to get some water in there to cause him to expel it.
Okay, and really quick, and I want to get to open chat. We're going to shorten these Wine Wednesdays, I promise. But final two topics, unless you guys ask questions and comments. Um, excuse me, my voice. But just a little more on Dimax, what it does, and all that stuff, and why it works, and then also why so many people have had success using Dimax or other products to do flushes. Those are my final two, Dan.
Well, I can't tell you all the stuff about Diamox. Diamox is our a carbonic on it anhydrous. I can't even say it, inhibitor. Um,
I can't
and
help
for
you.
some reason, it makes the air drop down in many cases with seahorses where they have gas bubbles. We know that it works. We know that there's no real bad side effects normally using it, but it's one of those things that I see people jumping through hoops to get when in many cases it's not needed. Um, if you've got a seahorse with internal, external gas bubble disease on the skin, on the tail, in the eye, around the eyes, and places like that, it makes sense to use the Diamox. But the thing that people need to realize is that Diamox does not solve the problem; it only treats the symptom. Doesn't create. It's not a cure. It's almost like taking cold medication. Cold medication doesn't make the cold go away. You just feel better. And a lot of people think just because they have the Diamox, they can treat with Diamox and everything is good. No, that's not the case. You still got to treat the underlying problem.
God, Kim, I agree. Such a good point. fantastic. I've had to use Diamox myself in a situation where it wasn't pouch emphysema. It was, you know, bubbles on the tail and what Dan just described. But it's not always necessary, and it is only treating the symptoms, you know, not the actual problem. So, great point. We made it earlier too that you got to go back and look at the display tank and figure out what's going on, why this is happening. So, great points. And now I forgot my last question. What was it? Oh, just why so many people have had success. You know, like I wish Ray was here, but he used a crazy product once to do a flush and it seemed to work. But basically,
Yeah.
why do people have success with that? And just your main recommendation is clean salt water.
Well, the reason I say clean salt water is because clean salt water works. And a lot of times people are using Diamox or they're using an antibiotic and they're doing the flush with that and they say that works. Well, the reality is if they were using clean salt water, they could have had just as much success.
Mm.
Just because they put something in there doesn't mean that something worked. Um, I have a hard time getting that across, and especially, one of the companies out there teaches people, through their help forum and through their stuff to, make a mixture with, antibiotics and Diamox to flush the pouch for that, and it's really not needed
And
in
Frank,
most cases.
and frankly, you especially if you're putting antibiotics into the mix, but antibiotics and or Diamox, once you use that on a seahorse, whether it's in their pouch or their tank, you're is there a probability that you're setting them up for I can't think how to ask the question properly, but like where they're not able to deal with it the next time, like superbugs kind of thing.
I'm not so much concerned about that. I'm
Okay.
more concerned about putting chemicals in the pouch and ruining the male from being able to carry fry in the future. Um,
Yeah.
I'm also worried that people strive too hard to use stuff when they don't need to.
Which I'll say, guys, if you've done this yourself or, whatever, I'm telling you, I get it because it's scary. When you're not Dan or you don't have someone like Dan at your side, it's really scary when you see this going on and you jump and want to do anything you can to help your seahorse. But that's the whole point to this video and this live stream so that you can see that you don't have to jump and do that stuff. There are easier methods that can work without throwing a bunch of chemicals. And
I
go ahead.
I do still take calls and help people when they're having problems.
Don't forget that, y'all. Okay, so I've asked all my questions. I'm opening it up to the other people in the video or anyone in chat. I'm going to put this back on gallery view. If you guys have any thoughts, questions about the topic, if not, we can move on to open chat and see what's going on with everybody. Anybody got a question about pouch emphysema? And let me check the chat. Kim, yes, that's why our groups are so awesome. Miss Holly, Nicole, anything?
Aren't they pretty strong when you're holding on to them? Do they try to grab you with their tail and
I will sometimes let them grab my little finger with their tail, and
I think
once they've
mine
done that, they're good to go.
good? I was thinking I picked mine up a couple times and they seem really strong for their size.
Absolutely. Have you
If they're
guys
struggling in your hand, that might freak people out. I'm just thinking, and they're kind of because they're skeletons on the outside,
Yeah, they have an
so they
exoskeleton.
feel they feel hard.
have you guys ever heard the bone crunching sound? That's terrifying,
I
but
have not.
you have
I have
not.
not. But I'm glad you told me about it because yeah, if I ever do someday, it would probably freak me out.
And you can literally like feel it. It's almost like this I don't want to sound crazy, y'all, but it's almost like you hear it through the feel, if that makes any sense.
Probably
Like
trying to scare you.
they
I know
are.
mine has played dead before
Oh,
when he was scared.
I
I
believe
It
think
it.
scared me.
Go
I
ahead,
think it was
Dan.
Paul Anderson that did his thesis on sound and stress on seahorses, and there was some interesting things he had in there about why they produce sound and how they do it, and it's a fairly long paper, but that was his specialty at the time, and they produce sound for several different reasons, and that's one of them is stress.
Gotcha. Chris, What do you think? Are they chit-chatting with each other? Are they screaming, "Come save me from this crazy lady holding me"? And Kim, you said, is it snicking? Do you mean the sound? No. I don't even know how better to describe it. But the first time I tried to treat a male seahorse with pouch emphysema when I was new and had my tank not set up properly, and finally got over that thanks to Dan. But when I did, and I had to do a pouch evacuation, if I said that properly, when I grabbed the seahorse and started trying to open the pouch to let the air out, it just, it feels like they're moving their bones against each other. It's like,
It's almost
no,
like a clicking type sound.
I'm probably
It
not
feel
giving.
it feels, if you could imagine a clicking type sound, kind of cross between a grunt and a clicking, and when you hold them, it's a little bit of vibration.
That the vibration is why it feels like you're hearing it. Like I was like, am I actually hearing this or am I feeling this? Oh, it's both. Oh crap. You know, it's crazy. Seahorses are very special creatures. They're
They don't all
awesome.
do it though.
Really?
Yeah.
Chris said sublagatus are super loud. And yeah, Kim, it's freaky. But you know, you got to take charge with the seahorse. Listen, man, I'm trying to help you. But go ahead, Dan. Which ones don't?
Even within the same species. I mean, I've had most of them don't do it with me.
Really? They trust you. They can see your
I've had some do it, but most of the time I don't experience it.
Gotcha. Okay, guys. Well, if there's no other, Dan, if there's anything I didn't cover, or if you want to say anything else, feel free. Otherwise, it's open chat, and we're gonna make this Wine Wednesday much shorter. Was there anything else you wanted to cover, say, or?
Well, Kim said like a bidet, and that's pretty much what a pouch flushing is like using a bidet.
There you go. Well, I'm gonna check in then, and we can always jump back to it, guys. No problem. But Holly, how you doing? What's going on with you?
Well, I have some new babies I told you about last week.
Right.
So there was 163 of them born over 2 days. And I've got them in a 10-gallon tank. I vacuumed up 55 dead ones. So
Oh,
so they're slowly going down, but I have a bunch of really healthy ones. So I'll probably end up with more from this batch than I did the previous.
nice. And I think, and I definitely want to jump back to you, Holly, and find out how you're personally doing. Like, I don't know what's going on with the fires and such. But Nicole, I know we talked via Messenger, and I probably dropped off on you. I figured out there was like 3 people that I started messages to and never sent them. I'm so sorry, Laura. If you watch later, I'm so sorry. And she'll be back next week, guys. She's just election watching that. But Nicole, I remember from our conversation that you had some new fry and you were making some changes. Anything new on that front or anything new, period?
No, nothing new.
Are you
Nothing
still?
new. Eventually, I'm probably gonna just build. I'm probably gonna build one of the, the fry systems, but we're not there yet, and I don't think we're expecting any new babies. Thank God. I need a break for a minute. Too many water changes.
Well, once you get that system set up, Dan, she's actually looking at doing kind of like what I did, a miniature version of what you do and Alyssa does. Very a smaller version of that. And I told her how successful it makes you, but she had to be prepared for being successful, and she's got it all planned out. So when you get there, Nicole, we'd love to see and have you share, but I won't press you any further. Is anything new with the seahorse, with the batch that you had?
No, they're very, very few. I only have 4 of that huge batch that I have. I had, excuse me. My setup's not right. I have a 5-gallon and I have a 10-gallon, and that's what I got right now. So that's kind of why, instead of, buying a bunch of small tanks, I'd rather just wait and build a good system,
Yes. Absolutely. And the really cool thing is that, when with our group, which is all of us in the Seahorse community, you got people like Dan or myself that will absolutely help you figure out how to be successful if you want to be. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being someone who just wants to raise a few fry because you love it and because you just like it, as long as you don't get depressed about, um, not being as successful as, keeping them all alive, I guess. But if you want to, we can help you. And if you don't want to, keep kicking. I mean, Holly makes me proud every time. She's got a bunch of little Cheryls. It's awesome. So, Dan, were you going to say something or no?
No, I was
Okay.
just typing away over here.
Yes, I see. I won't bring up what you're talking about unless you want to. But Kim, Chris, anybody watching in the comment section, if there's anything you want us to chit chat about, I definitely want to make this shorter, guys, because that way we can actually watch it and not not talk endlessly all night. But I want to make sure everybody gets to talk about anything they want to talk about or any questions that you have. Holly, is everything okay? What's going on with the electricity and stuff? The fires
No,
and
that's all fine now. Hopefully, we went through our last bout. It hasn't been windy. The weather's cooled down. We're going to start getting into winter soon. So I've actually preparing for that. Yeah, I've had to change things around from it's going to be hot to it's going to be cold.
right.
So that's going fine. I'm real busy. It's my busy season for work.
Oh,
So I'm running
Open
like crazy
enrollment.
trying to take care of the seahorses, and I do insurance. It's open enrollment right now. So I'm running a lot of appointments. So yeah, I'm busy, busy, busy on all fronts.
and of course they keep spitting out babies at you, right? The seahorses.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, not again. I need seahorse birth control.
Dan,
We
is
get
there seahorse birth control?
we have to watch for Zeta now.
What's what's Zeta?
What's that?
Hurricane Zeta, the one that hit
Yeah,
Nicaragua or wherever it was.
uh-huh.
The current forecast brings it back up into Florida now.
Jeez.
Uh-oh.
It's just like it never ends. It's one thing. Kim, I saw your comment. Your mandrid died because of political stress. I mean, it's just one thing after another. I'm so like, let's just drink wine and talk about seahorses. But no, I mean, I hear you. This stuff is really important, and I just wish this stuff would quit. You know. But
Yeah, but this time of year it won't be as bad. I mean, they got whacked pretty good down there, but by the time it gets to us, it has to cross Cuba, which goes over a mountainous range. And right now it's predicted to come through as a tropical storm wherever it comes through. So, I'm not, even a Cat 1, we don't get too shook up here. It's the
yeah,
stronger storms. When you start getting Cat 2, Cat 3, then different ball game.
of course. Well, I'm on your side. And I did see, Chris, you said you've got a new batch of tuberculosis coming through. Nice. I'm sure you're really busy right now, but we'd love to hear more about what's happening over on your area whenever you get a chance, maybe next week, or we'll watch your posts, of course, and I'll keep sharing them. But congrats, that's awesome. Would love to know what's going on. Yeah, I'm really curious, Chris, what's going on with the whitey eye? Or whitey, however you want to say it. Curious. Chris says there's no birth control for seahorses. Dan, what do you
Nope.
do if you don't want seahorses to have babies?
Well, our means of birth control is to separate them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or to really want a batch of fry.
So, oh yeah, right, exactly. When you really want them, they stop giving them. I tell you. Hey, totally kind of weird or kind of off topic, but when do seahorses typically stop breeding? Is there an age or
When they die,
really they keep going
uh,
till they die?
I've had H. reedi that were in captivity, came into captivity as adults, and they were in captivity for 10 years, and they were still producing fry.
Wow.
Most of my brood stock that I had the most success with